Jesus Christ is the King because He is a King with a difference. And in turn, my dear friends, He invites you and me to be His people, but a people with a difference. இயேசு கிறிஸ்து உலகிற்கே அரசர், ஏனெனில் அவர் ஒரு வித்தியாசமான அரசர். அவரை பின்பற்றும் மக்களாகிய நாமும் வித்தியாசமான மக்களாக இருக்க அழைக்கப்படுகின்றோம். My dear friends, today we celebrate the feast of Christ the King, and this feast was established by the Pope Pius XI in 1925 in response to growing nationalism and secularism. And this feast was originally celebrated in the month of October, but later from 1969 onwards, Pope Paul VI changed this feast from October to the last Sunday of the ordinary time of the liturgical year, that is, the previous Sunday of the season of Advent. As we know, next Sunday onwards, we begin the season of Advent, that is the beginning of the new liturgical year. So today is the last Sunday of the ordinary times of the liturgical year. Then we have 4 Sundays of the Advent season, then we have Christmas time, a few Sundays of common liturgical year, again we begin the Lenten season, and then we have Pasch season, then we have some Sundays of the common liturgical year, and that will end up with the Christ the King feast. So that is how the liturgy is arranged for us throughout the year. And this feast is a reminder to think of the end times, the end of the world. In fact, last Sunday and the previous Sunday also, the readings were inviting us to think of the last days of the world and last days of our life. Do you remember last Sunday's Gospel reading? That was the 5 talents, 2 talents and 1 talent who received from the master, but how they made 5 more and so on, and the master called them for the accounts to be given. And the previous to that Sunday was the 10 bridesmaids, 5 with the lamb and 5 lamp and oil. You know how they were waiting to receive the bridegroom. So these 3 Sundays invite us to remember the end times of the world. So in my sharing, my dear friends, today, the first part, I will say a few words about the end of the world and end of our lives. And in the second part, we have some reflections on the feast of Christ the King. First, the end of the times and end of the world. You know, the end of the world, when is it going to happen? Do you know when the world is going to end? You don't even know when I'm going to finish my homily, right? Then how do you know about the end of the world? And the end of the world is nothing but end of our own lives. When I am going to die, that is the end of the world. We are not going to be bothered about the world once we die. And when that end comes, that also we do not know. Usually we think that death is the end of our lives. And that death is very frightening, very mysterious. We do not know what is happening at the time of death, and afterwards what will happen, we do not know, precisely because we have not died so far, right? We have seen other people dying in our own family, our relatives, our friends, but we have not died, so we do not know what is death. And whatever is unknown to us, we always have sort of fear towards them, towards it. So this death is considered to be very mysterious. And generally we think life is not mysterious because we know what life is. We have been living from the time we are born till we are going to die. So we know what life is. Only death, we do not know what is going to happen. Actually, my dear friends, death is also equally mysterious, if not more, than the life. Death is equally mysterious, and life is also equally mysterious. And this death and life both are two sides of the same coin, because every moment we die and every moment we live. Usually we think that death is the last thing that's going to occur at the end of our life. That is not true. Every moment we are dying. For instance, unless I die to this moment and unless I'm ready to pass on to the next moment, life is not possible. Every breath that I take in is a sign of life, and every breath that I take out is a sign of life and death. So, the moment I breathe in is a sign of life, and the moment I breathe out is a sign of death. And there will be a last breath that I will be taking in, and I will not be able to take it out, and that is called be death. So death is not something is going to occur at the last day or the last moment in our lives. Every moment we are experiencing it that. In Tamil prayer, Eucharistic adoration, Thirumani Aradhane, there's one beautiful saying, a candle is burning as it is dying, and the candle is burning as it is melting, and it is melting as it is burning. O human being, you are dying as you are living, and you are living as you are dying. So, this life and death always go hand in hand together, my dear friends. And usually we think that death is mysterious, but life is also equally mysterious. Now, what is life? Is a $1,000,000 question. Where is the life residing in our body? Is it in the brain, or heart, or in kidney, or in the liver, or in the blood, or in the blood cells, or in the chromosome, or in the genes? Where is the life exactly located? No answer. When a person dies, what exactly happens to him or her? What leaves from him? What leaves from her? We do not know. Usually we say the soul leaves, the spirit leaves, the breath of God leaves, etc. These are the various expressions behind which we hide ourselves because we do not know what life is. If we do not know what life is, don't worry. Even the science is also not knowing what life is. Today, science is wondering how to understand this concept of life. When a person is dead, we can donate his eyes to another person within 6 hours, which means the eyes are living for 6 hours after we die. Similarly, the food that the person has eaten before death, it is being digested for 6 hours. That means the microbes and the bacteria in the stomach are able to digest the food even after the person is dead. That means those bacteria and the microbes are alive in the stomach. Similarly, they say the skin cells keep on multiplying for 24 hours after the death. What is the meaning? The cells are alive, active, even after the person is done. That means, does the person give life to the bacteria, or the bacteria is giving life to the person? We do not know. That is why we say life is a mystery. And what exactly happens when a person dies? We do not know. And in the physics, there is a branch called thermodynamics. As we know, according to thermodynamics, energy cannot be created, cannot be destroyed. It can be converted from one level to another level. It can be converted from one form to another form. For example, the electric energy in the fan is converted into mechanical motion energy, and we get the breeze. And the food that I ate in the morning is being digested and gives me energy that is converted into the speech, the action of speaking, the sound energy. So energy can be converted from one form to another form. Now, if we believe that life is an energy that cannot be also destroyed, it cannot be created. It is converted from one form to another form. So death, which we think is the end of life, it's not really the end of life. It is a change into some other form, some other mode of energy. Maybe that is what we, the believers, call it life after death. Maybe the scientists may not accept it to acknowledge it as life after death, but we can understand in a way death is not the end of that energy called life. It is changed from one form to another form. And that is why when Jesus says, our God is the God of living, God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and all these people are dead and gone for us, but for Him, they are living. So, my dear friends, life is a mystery, life is a gift to us. And if we are worried about the life after death, let us be worried about the life before death. Because life after death depends on the life before death. Therefore, today, as we reflect upon the end times, as we reflect upon the last day of our own lives, let us concentrate on the life before death, and the life after death will take care of itself. Now, coming to the feast of the Christ the King. Jesus Christ is the King. He is not a king. You know the difference between the article, right? Definite article and the specific article, indefinite article. Jesus Christ is not a king because we have many a king in the history. Ashoka was a king, Napoleon was a king. So we have many kings in the history, but Jesus is the king. And all these a king, many kings in history, they are dead and gone. And all these kings have a specific time in their life, in existence, and their territory also is specific. But Jesus is the king because he has no particular history, he has no particular geography. He belongs to everyone and everywhere, and every nation belongs to him, and that is why he is the king. And how to address Jesus as the king when we see him on the cross crucifix being crucified as a criminal? Is it worthwhile, or is there any meaning to address Jesus as the king? Yes, we have a biblical basis for that. For example, the book of the Gospel of Matthew, in the beginning, we have the genealogy account of Jesus, and it begins like this. We see the family tree of Jesus. It begins like this: a genealogy of Jesus Christ, son of David. David was the king 1,000 years before Jesus. Similarly, Matthew 20:30, we find the two blind men shouting to Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me. Again, Matthew 21:9, we find people singing to Jesus, Hosanna to the Son of David. Speaking about the last judgment, today's gospel, we find Jesus asserts himself to be the king and coming to make the last judgment. And when Jesus was crucified, the plate kept on the cross says INRI. What's the meaning of INRI? Jesus Nazarenus Rex Judaeorum. That is, Jesus the Nazarene, King of the Jews. Maybe Pilate did not believe that he was Jesus. Maybe just to make fun of him, he wrote Jesus the King. Jesus of Nazareth, the King of Jews, but it was true. And when Pilate was asking, Jesus says, I am king, but my kingdom does not belong to this world. So we have the biblical support passage to show that Jesus is the king. My dear friends, this Jesus is a different king of difference. That is why we call him the king. Why? Because Jesus is a king without a nation, not even a place to sleep, unlike the birds of the air which have their nets to rest. Jesus is a king falsely accused by the authorities and deserted by his own, stripped and beaten. Jesus is a king crucified on the cross, hoisted up for all to see, thirsty and dying a lonely death. Jesus is a king jeered by the leaders and the soldiers, taunted by one of the criminals crucified along with him. He is a king who waged no wars against anyone, who saw no one as an enemy. Jesus is a king who acted purely on the internal moral strength, not on the external strength of the forces or money. Jesus is a king without a palace. When he was born, he could not get a place even in the inn, and so he was born in someone else's cowshed. And after his death, he was buried in somebody else's graveyard. Jesus is a king without soldiers. He had a few apostles and disciples, and they too ran away from him when he was crucified. Jesus is a king without royal clothes and robes. In fact, he was finally left on the cross with not a piece of cloth on his body. And Jesus is a king without a prince or princess. Yes, he was not at all interested to perpetuate his progeny after his death. He surrendered everything that he had for others. Jesus was a king born without any announcement in the villages and towns of the kingdom. No proclamations, no bells, no holiday, no celebration to mark his birth or death. And that is why Jesus becomes the king, because he is a king, the difference. Today, my dear friends, that Jesus, who is the king, invites you and me to be his people, but people of difference. And what is the difference? He expects us to follow the values of the gospel, not the values of the world. We would not become slaves to the clutches of the consumerism, to value only the rich, to value the powerful, the attractive, and the noisy, if we are people with a difference. We would not love things and use people, because God expects us to love people and use things, but we are using the other way. If we are people with a difference, we would not become dangerously pragmatic to value only the useful and the modern. And the developed nations would not have become blind to the plights of the poor nations, would not exploit them on their inability. They would not pollute their land, water, and air while keeping their own environment very clean and safe. So, my dear friends, if we are people with a difference, naturally we will be following the values of the gospel. And passage, we saw how the last judgment takes place. What are the questions asked there? God is not asking us how many times you read the Bible, how many times you made pilgrimage to holy places, the Holy Land, or how many times you had big conventions and gathered big rally for me. He is asking very simple question: how many times you gave food, water, whether you gave clothes to the naked, whether you visited when someone was sick, whether you visited in the prison, whether you shared your time and word of consolation to the needy. That's the question he is going to ask, my dear friends. It is like this. Sometimes the students, when they prepare for exam, they prepare, they think of big questions, important questions, thinking that will come in the exam. But finally, when they see the question paper, they see ordinary simple questions which they never expected to come there. So our final judgment, God is going to ask us the simple question: how many times you fed, how many times you visited the sick, the lowly, and those who are in prison. Therefore, my dear friends, as we celebrate this King of the universe, who is the King, but he is a King with a difference, and he expects us to be his people, but people with a difference. And the difference is gospel becomes the guiding light, gospel becomes the path, the values of the gospel becomes our own life, and that will make us a people with a difference. Let us sing about it today.